Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. This is two podcasts in one. One where we dive into tons of interesting topics, and another where we dive into tons of interesting books and stories. So today, let's learn all about Martin Luther King Jr. So much has been said about this iconic man, one of the most important people to live in the history of the United States of America. So we will touch on everything. His I Have a Dream speech, the fact that he led the civil rights movement in the 1960s, the fact that he won the Nobel Peace Prize, and yes, the fact that he was taken from us so early in his life, and there's so much more that he could have done. But just know this, in his short life, he impacted so many millions of lives for the better that we still celebrate him today. He was born on January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. But here's something a lot of us may not know. He wasn't born Martin Luther King Jr. His name was Michael King Jr. His father, Michael King Sr., he was a powerful Baptist minister in Atlanta, and his mother was named Alberta Williams King. She was a school teacher and a musician. Martin had an older sister named Christine and a younger brother named Alfred Daniel, often called A.D. The King family during this time lived in a world divided by race. Segregation was the law throughout much of the South. Segregation, for my younger members of the audience, means a system that was set up that kept different groups of people apart. And because of that, many groups of people were treated unfairly. Imagine being at a school and being told that you aren't allowed to play with certain kids at recess, or you weren't able to sit at specific lunch tables, or couldn't even use the same drinking fountain just because of what you look like. That is what segregation did. It unfairly divided communities. And this goes back to a law that was in place as the Civil War ended and as the South was reconstructed, with now not having slavery be legal. Many states, little by little, created these laws that separated people. And the Supreme Court, in a case called Plessy versus Ferguson, came out in 1896 and rubber stamped, which means they said it was okay to keep people separate as long as these groups that were separated were quote unquote equal. But what happened as we go into the 1900s? What was clear is that no, they were not equal in real time, in reality, and this is the environment that the King family lived in down in the South. It affected, like I said, everything from schools to restaurants to buses to theaters to voting booths. This is the world that MLK Jr. was born into, yet inside his family, there was a powerful message. You are just as good as anyone else, and this lesson came from Martin's father, Michael King Sr. Now remember, that's his name. Right? That's his dad's name. He grew up in poverty. But through determination and faith, he became the pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. Years later, after traveling to Germany and learning about the Protestant reformer Martin Luther, oh yeah, definitely a future episode, he became so convinced and so inspired by what Martin Luther had done to upend the world through what he felt was unfair and unjust ways that organized religions are being run, that he changed his name to Martin Luther King. And he changed his son's name as well. Historians are not really clear exactly when that change became official, but Martin, or Michael, was still a young child when he became MLK Jr. Junior talked later about the influence of both of his parents. His father gave him courage. His mother gave him compassion. Alberta King was deeply religious and educated. She taught Martin music and faith. She reminded him constantly that although society might treat him unfairly, he was every bit as valuable as anybody else. His father taught him different lessons. Never surrender your dignity. Many of his childhood stories that we know come from King's own writings, interviews, and later biographies written by different people, Taylor Branch, David Garrow, Claiborne Carson, and others. One of the most important stories happened when Junior was about 6 years old. He had a white friend who lived nearby. The boys played together all the time. And then one day, the friendship was over. Why? Because the white boy's parents told their son he could no longer play with Martin. Why? Because he was black. Martin was devastated. He later described how painful and confusing that moment felt. Perhaps for the first time, he realized that, society saw him differently. His mother sat him down and explained all about segregation, all about racism, and she told him something he would never forget. Never believe you are less than anyone else. There were a few other early stories, and so much of your character, like I've mentioned in all these series of episodes about people who fought for a cause, they're shaped early on, right? Another occurred in a shoe store. According to accounts that were repeated by King and later biographers, Martin and his father entered a shoe store and sat in the front area to be served. A clerk came in and told them to move to the back because they were black. Martin's father refused. Instead, he stood up and walked out with his son. The lesson was simple. Do not cooperate with humiliation. And another story was when they were stopped by a police officer. Apparently, his father was speeding. The policeman stopped the car and addressed Martin's father as boy. King's father responded by pointing to his son and saying these words, "That's a boy, I'm a man." The exact wording apparently varies differently according to the source, but the message was clear. As the story goes, he again said to the policeman, "Until you call me a man, I will not listen to you." As Junior came of age, he excelled in school. He was so higher above than his peers that he skipped both ninth and the 12th grade. At 15 years old, he was already in college. Think about that. He attended Morehouse College, which is a historically black college in Atlanta, and it was led by this influential president. His name was Benjamin Mays. He became one of King's greatest mentors. He challenged students to think beyond themselves and to use their talents in service to their fellow men and women. After he graduated from Morehouse, King attended Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. Here's somebody grown up in the segregated South, and Pennsylvania obviously was a different world. He studied theology intensely, and he graduated near the top of his class. While at Crozer, he began reading the works of so many philosophers and religious thinkers. Most importantly, he encountered the teaching of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi had helped lead India's independence from Britain through. This is so important to everything about Martin Luther King Jr. Gandhi preached getting things done through nonviolent protest. King was fascinated. Wait a minute, that could actually be a weapon against segregation in America? No eye for an eye. Yes, don't accept what is happening to you, what is unfair, but don't be violent. Don't try to change things by breaking laws. Turn the other cheek. So much of his foundational ideas about advancing civil rights in our country, no doubt, came from this period, and certainly everything that his mother passed on to him about loving your neighbor, whether they're being fair or not. After Crozer, he went to Boston University to get his PhD, which is where his doctorate comes from. He studied something called systematic theology. It studies about different religions, ideas, and beliefs that ultimately fit together. His doctorate is in philosophy. And here's something interesting. What the philosophy that he relied on heavily was called personalism. This is the belief that God had a personal nature, that he loved every individual human being, and that everyone has dignity and worth. You can see where so many of these studies brought him in terms of him being certainly at the right place in the right time and helping us as a society. He actually also took classes at Harvard University to study Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher. He basically thought that this idea of segregation was not just a bad law, it was a sin because it treated people as objects instead of human beings. It was during this time as well that he sharpened his ability not only as a great writer, but as a great speaker. He used his deep knowledge of the Bible with so many of these different philosophies that explained civil rights in a way that made sense and that shaped and inspired millions of people. What else happened when he was in Boston? Well, he met someone by the name of Coretta Scott. She was intelligent, ambitious, and she was studying music in Boston. They immediately clicked. Coretta later joked that she had been searching for a preacher. They loved talking about faith and religion and commitments to justice. They were married on June 18th, 1953. King's father performed the wedding, and they would go on to have 4 children: Yolanda, Martin III, Dexter, and Bernice. Soon after, King completed his doctorate, and now the next chapter of his life was about to begin. It's now 1954, and King accepted a position as a pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. He was only 25 years old. No one knew him, but that would change in a hurry. On December 1st, 1955, a seamstress by the name of Rosa Parks got on a Montgomery City bus. She was ordered to surrender her seat to a white passenger, and she refused. She was arrested. Black leaders in Montgomery began discussing how they were going to respond to this. This had happened multiple times, but she, again, was in the right place at the right time, and she was just tired. She didn't want to get out of her seat. No doubt we'll have a future episode on her as well. They chose Martin Luther King Jr. to be the person that would lead this protest against what was happening on these buses in Montgomery. Why? It was obvious. He was educated, he was respected, he was articulate, he was young, and yeah, he was relatively new to town. They decided they were going to boycott, which basically means refuse to purchase a product or service or refuse to go along with certain types of laws. So people across Montgomery, mostly African Americans, decided that they weren't going to take the buses for that one day. It succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. They made a bold decision. They were going to continue the boycott. And it lasted for 381 days. People walked, they carpooled, they shared rides, and they endured threats along the way. Some of them lost their jobs. They were intimidated. and King emerged as this movement's most visible spokesman. Then came one of the most frightening nights of his life. The phone rang. He answered it. Someone on the other end of the line told him if he didn't leave town within a few days, his house would be bombed. He had a wife. He had a young child, only weeks old. The call had come in late at night. He was by himself. He went into his kitchen. He made himself a cup of coffee, and he prayed. He thought of giving up his cause. He was scared for his family, but he prayed. As he later relayed the story, this inner voice, God spoke to him, telling him, no, you still need to stand up for justice, and despite everything, you would never be alone. Days later, a bomb did explode. It was thrown on his front porch, dynamite, it exploded. His wife was there with a friend. His daughter was in the back of the house, thank goodness, unharmed. She didn't even get up. But the message was clear. King's life had changed immediately. An angry crowd gathered outside. Most wanted revenge. King stepped out onto the porch. Destruction all around him. He urged calm. He told them to put down their weapons. And he famously said, don't do anything panicky. Don't get your weapons. If you have weapons, take them home. If you do not have them, please do not seek them. We cannot solve this problem through violence. We must meet violence with nonviolence. I mean, in the moment, it was his first most important speech. There was only a few people there, but he said, he who lives by the sword will perish by the sword. Remember, that is what God said. We are not advocating violence. We want to love our enemies. I want you to love our white brothers no matter what they do to us. We must make them know that we love them. Go home and don't worry. We are not hurt. And remember, if anything happens to me, there will be others to take my place. This movement will not stop. We are doing what is right. We are doing what is just, and God is with us. A horrible but powerful moment in the history of King's life. The bus boycott, it ultimately reached the courts. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. The boycott had ended in victory. King was now famous across the entire country. In 1957, he helped found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, otherwise known as the SCLC. Its mission was simple: fight segregation through nonviolent action. He ended up spending the next number of years traveling across the country, leading demonstrations, organizing campaigns, and yes, being arrested multiple times. And in 1963, King targeted Birmingham, Alabama. It had become one of the most segregated cities in the entire country. The city's public safety commissioner, his name was Eugene Bull Connor. He became notorious for his harsh tactics, and it was specifically and strategically picked as a place to get more press attention to the realities that were happening. Protests were set up, and the protesters were attacked with police dogs. Children, yes, children were blasted with fire hoses. Television cameras captured everything. The images shocked the nation. During this campaign, King was arrested. While he was in jail, he wrote one of the most important documents, not only in civil rights history, but in American history, you can argue. It was called The Letter from Birmingham Jail. A lot of people within the cause that supported Martin Luther King did not approve of his tactics. Even those nonviolent, they wanted him to go slow. The letter was written partly on scraps of newspaper, and it answered these critics who were saying that he was moving too fast to get justice. He argued that no, waiting for justice meant never receiving justice. The letter, like I said, remains one of the greatest defenses of civil disobedience ever written. And this momentum from Birmingham was not unnoticed. On August 28, 1963, more than 250,000 people marched on Washington, D.C. He was scheduled to speak near the Lincoln Memorial. He had prepared remarks, but then something unbelievable happened. Near the end of his speech, everything was planned as to what he was going to say, but this gospel singer, Mahalia Jackson, reportedly called out, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." King had spoken about the dream before. He moved away from what he was going to say, and history would change right there, right now. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Let freedom ring. We cannot walk alone. Free at last, thank God Almighty. We are free at last. The speech became one of the most celebrated speeches ever. I have a dream. King's movement changed America, and John F. Kennedy, who was the president at the time, supported civil rights legislation. But as you know, tragically, he was shot down. Lyndon B. Johnson, go back to my episode on him. He took the cause and ran with it. He had persuasive power more than anyone else in the country at the time. And again, he was at the right place at the right time. He pushed through the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It outlawed many forms of segregation and discrimination. Later that year, Coretta got a phone call that her husband had won the Nobel Peace Prize. He was only 35 years old. But despite this progress, many Black Americans still face barriers to voting. This was the next monumental change that King was looking for. He turns his attention to Selma, Alabama. In this particular place, again strategically chosen because the voting in this town was egregious. Now, this was Dallas County, and here are the numbers that's so unbelievable. 60%, almost 60% were Black in this county. 40% in change were white. Almost 100% of white adults were registered to vote, but only 2% of the eligible Black adults were registered to vote. Are you kidding me? So this is where King went. In March 1965, demonstrators attempted to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge. State troopers attacked them. The day became known as Bloody Sunday. Television viewers saw the horror. King helped nationalize and organize additional marches. The national outrage grew. Months later, President Johnson signed the Voting Act Rights of 1965. Everything now had changed because of Martin Luther King. Now, it's important to understand that this wasn't all sunshine and roses. King was constantly, within his own movement, doubted by many people. Many disagreed with his tactics. One of them was a gentleman by the name of Malcolm X. Listen, both of them wanted equality, both of them opposed racism, but they approached the struggle differently. King, like I said, preached nonviolence and integration. Malcolm X, he initially advocated self-defense and sharply criticized white society. Over time, Malcolm's views evolved, and believe it or not, these two men only met once. Their encounter was brief, And yes, both of them would pass away horribly and tragically too young. Both of them would leave enormous legacies. So at this point in Martin's life, they weren't that easy. Most people think that, yeah, his popularity grew over time. No, the truth is more complicated. As the 60s progressed, Martin Luther King came out against not only the injustices of what segregation was all about, but now with these victories with segregation and the Voting Rights Act, he was speaking out against so many other issues in the country, and he got more and more pushback. He spoke out against poverty. He criticized the Vietnam War. And there were some, although it proved to be absolutely wrong, some people assumed that he supported communism. The FBI began looking into him. All this was disapproved, but the reality was he was facing criticism from so many different directions, yet he persevered and continued. He established the Poor People's Campaign. He believed that poverty was a moral issue. Economic opportunity needed to be available for everyone. And this is what brought him to Memphis, Tennessee in 1968. Sanitation workers were on strike. 2 workers had been killed by faulty equipment. The workers were looking for safer conditions and fair treatment. King decided to support them. He traveled to Memphis. On the night of April 3rd, 1968, he wasn't feeling well. He was sick. They told him not to go up on stage. They pleaded with him. He went up on stage, and you can see it in the clips. He's sweating. His eyes are moving. They're darting back and forth. It was almost as if he was being prophetic that night. You can imagine what he's thinking, because here are the words that he said that night towards the end of his speech. I have been to the mountaintop. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight, we as a people will get to the promised land. The crowd roars, as so many times he had done. He had lifted people up, and he barely could stand in that moment. His handlers, his friends literally grabbed him to get him to sit down. He almost collapsed. The next day was April 4th. He spent most of the afternoon at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. He was staying in room 306. Friends and colleagues were moving in and out of the room. They were preparing to go to dinner at the home of a local minister. It was about 6 p.m. He stepped out into the balcony, and a shot rang out. He had been hit. Friends rushed towards him. They pointed towards the direction of the shot. They kneeled down towards him. They rushed him to a hospital. An hour later, he was gone. He was only 39 years old. The nation mourned, millions grieved, and yes, cities erupted in anger. A movement had lost its most recognizable and respected leader. What remains remarkable is how much he accomplished in just his short 39 years. He helped transform American law. He inspired millions. He showed that courage could be combined with compassion. He demonstrated that protest could be a powerful voice, a powerful vehicle, but without being violent. He reminded Americans that the promises contained in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution belong to everyone. Today, schools, streets, parks, monuments bear his name, and those same schools, streets, and parks are not segregated. Every January, we celebrate Martin Luther King Day. But perhaps his greatest legacy is not his birthday, not his holiday. It's a challenge. And what is that challenge? To keep moving forward towards things that are right and not wrong. You treat people with dignity, and you refuse hatred, and you celebrate love for everyone. Friends, thanks for taking this journey with me, learning all about Martin Luther King Jr. Reach out to me at KEVMLK21@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group. We have a YouTube channel. Hit that plus button in the top right-hand corner of Apple Podcasts. That will get you new episodes automatically on your phone. We're getting out an episode every couple days. And tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell anyone. If you like the podcast, I appreciate any support and telling as many people as you can. Until next time, have fun and keep learning.